Hey y'all, and welcome to Politibrawl. My name is Brian, and Stephen A. Smith exposes the truth in this fiery rant about the way the media has treated the Trump assassination attempt and what's really happening behind the scenes. This is wild. And before we dive in, we are sponsored by the Colonial Metals Group. If you want to protect your hard-earned dollars against Bidenomics and Bidenflation and want to invest in gold, silver, and precious metals, you got to go with my friends over at Colonial Metals Group. These experts know how to save your wealth.
In my opinion, the shooter, he just handed Donald Trump the election.
I agree.
That is what I believe. Of course, I don't know that as fact. Of course, things could change. But in my opinion, he just handed Donald Trump the election. Ladies and gentlemen, you can't buy, I've been in media for 30 years, you can't buy a better photo than what Donald Trump has at his disposal as we speak. He goes to the ground. He's got blood on his right ear, looked like it got nicked, which is what he said, it pierced his ear. He gets up, he looks disheveled, all right? Clearly taken aback by what happened, and rightfully so. Blood trickling down his ears and the right side of his face. Surrounded by Secret Service agents. Raises his fist. Is shriveled, cringing his face up. Fight, fight, fight. He says it 3 times. And while raising his fist, surrounded by Secret Service agents, the American flag is behind him. Ladies and gentlemen, you can't buy that. You can't buy a better photo than that if you're a politician. You can't buy a better photo than that. Look at the video of him raising his fist. Look at the crowd going crazy behind him. Look at them saying, yeah, 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 And then listen to the pundits on TV talking about how strong, how vibrant, how courageous. And they were using these words. And not coincidentally, it was the antithesis of what they've been saying about President Biden. Now you see right there what Donald Trump's statement was on his Truth social media page in the aftermath of what transpired. I want to thank the United States Secret Service and all of law enforcement officials for their rapid response on the shooting that just took place in Butler, Pennsylvania. Most importantly, I want to extend my condolences to the family of the person at the rally who was killed and also to the family of another person that was badly injured. It is incredible that such an act can take place in our country. I was shot with a bullet that pierced the upper part of my right ear. I knew immediately that something was wrong and that I heard a whizzing sound, shots, and immediately felt the bullet ripping through the skin. Much bleeding took place, so I realized then what was happening. God bless America. This is what he's doing. There's not a word in there that he said that we can refute. And he brought up somebody that was injured. This individual was killed. Shots rang out, and he literally jumped to save his wife, to cover his wife and his 2 children. And he got hit in the head, and he was killed. My condolences to him, to his family, and to him, of course, and to those who were injured at the rally as well. But make no mistake about it, Donald Trump, in my opinion, secured the presidency with this. A Donald Trump that was impeached twice. A Donald Trump that had a $454 million settlement levied against him. A Donald Trump that was convicted on 34 felony counts, yet was still the presumptive GOP nominee. That Donald Trump is now a martyr. You can slice it any way you want to. If you're talking about America and the kind of impact visuals have on our society, good or bad, as a politician, it don't get any better than the picture by the Associated Press, by the way, that you see of Donald Trump surrounded by Secret Service agents, raising his fist, imploring folks to continue to fight with the American flag behind him. It doesn't get any better than that, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm not using words like better and stuff like that inappropriately because obviously I'm not talking about his shooting. That in and of itself is egregious and awful and heinous. I'm talking about the photo thereafter. As a politician, it doesn't get, you can't find a better photo than that. You just can't. And so this is where we are. And if you are President Biden, boy, you've got your work cut out for you now.
I can't believe I'm saying this, and I think this is the third time that this has happened now. I agree with everything that Stephen A. Smith just said. And remember, he came out in support of Trump a couple of months ago, and his producers and the media team had to force him to backtrack because they were afraid of the backlash. So far, there's actually a lot of coded language going on here, where he's trying to be neutral. What he's really doing is he's trying to toe the line so his producers don't jump down his throat again. And he's absolutely right. The assassination attempt probably just gave Trump the presidency. This is the same exact energy that I'm feeling when Colin Kaepernick took a knee during the national anthem. That was the moment that I think a lot of Midwestern voters and sports fans went, oh, no, we can't support this. We can't support this. This is our flag. This is something worth protecting. This is worth standing up for. You are asked to stand for the national anthem, and so Colin Kaepernick decided to kneel. I am not voting for the people that support this. So I'm getting the exact same vibes here, but this is even bigger. If you've seen the video, if you've seen the picture, blood streaming down his face, hand raised in the air, with the American flag right behind him, surrounded by Secret Service. There were two iconic pictures captured during World War II. One was the sailor and the nurse kissing each other on Life magazine. The other was the raising of the flag on Mount Suribachi in Iwo Jima, 1945. Both iconic images. And yes, both are more iconic than this. But this is a I can hear you, the whole world hears you moment after 9/11. I think this tops it. This is just such a unique picture, and Stephen A. Smith recognizes this for what it truly is. This is a change in the winds, and it's proof positive that rhetoric has gotten out of control in America, and that's what Stephen A. Smith is about to harp on next. And he's absolutely correct.
You know, I watched a lot of news over the last 48 hours. And we've seen a lot of political pundits and politicians over the airwaves waxing poetically about we need to tone down the rhetoric. I just played you the sound from the President of the United States saying we got to tone down the rhetoric and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, the American public is getting lectured on what we need to do to dial back the rhetoric. I don't disagree with that sentiment. I don't disagree with that sentiment at all. But I'll be damned if I don't disagree, or I don't at least have a problem, rather, with the politicians and the pundits who have the audacity, the unmitigated gall to stick their big faces in front of a camera and think they get to lecture us when they're the ones who instigate all of this.
Yep.
It's them. It's them. All of this rhetoric we're talking about, and I don't mean in any way to imply that that's responsible for crooks trying to assassinate the president. No, that's on him. Clearly, something was wrong with him. Clearly, the bullying got to him, and he wanted to sit up there and be a martyr or a hero or whatever the hell he thought of himself. I'm certainly not going to blame politicians or political pundits for that, but I don't want to be lectured about how we need to dial down the rhetoric when you're the one that's fomenting it. You're the one instigating it. You're the one starting it. All of you. Republicans and Democrats. Politicians and pundits. All of you. You did that. Not us. Not the American people. Black, white, Latino, Asian American, Jews, Catholics, Christians. It don't matter. Y'all did that. That wasn't us.
Y'all, times are rough. Record inflation is still not under control. We have a president who doesn't know what planet he's on. And the Federal Reserve continues to make dumb decision after dumb decision after dumb decision. You can gamble on Wall Street all you want, but if you want to diversify and protect your wealth, you need to look into my friends over at Colonial Metals Group. These amazing experts understand how to keep your wealth safe and protected from the volatility of our current market. And there's even a great deal for first-time accounts. Free gold and silver-backed IRA accounts, insurance on whatever precious metals you happen to buy for 5 years, up to $7,500 worth of silver, and a nice safe for you to keep all this good stuff in. So go take a look at their website, link in the description below, or call the phone number below so you can talk personally to Paul Stone, CEO, and his amazing team of experts to protect your wealth today. He's absolutely right. Again, we have a huge problem with rhetoric in the United States. And I'm going to use some personal anecdotes here. What I've seen over my young political life. I have worked in 2 different state capitals in 3 separate attempts. I live in DC. I have worked in politics for the majority of my young life. I have worked at state, local, and federal elections. I have knocked on doors. I have made phone calls. I've waved posters. I've made signs. I have worked in the nitty-gritty. I've seen the legislative process, and I follow the judicial one religiously. I'm also a licensed paralegal, and that's why I love the constitutional side. When I majored in political science, my favorite class was the constitutional class. That was a lot of fun. The way I had to frame arguments was just so different. And that's why I'm speaking to you on political matters. I feel like I know just enough to have an opinion that's rational, makes sense, and is based on what I've observed to be true. And thus, I can tell you with absolute certainty that the rhetoric of the grassroots left is demonstrably violent. If you go onto Tumblr, if you go onto Reddit, if you go into left-wing Twitter, you are going to see calls for violence constantly. Like 1 out of every 5 posts. And 1 out of every 5 comments will be, yes, we need to rise up and root these people out. I have seen lefties wanting to guillotine people. I have heard their rhetoric and what they say in their spaces, and it terrifies me. Forget the political and ruling class here. Forget the dominant class. These are the children of the rich white liberals. All right? These are the people who organized the Summer of Love riots. These are the people who organized a bunch of college students to protest for the terrorists. The grassroots of the left wing is based inherently on calls to violence. That does not exist on the right wing. And when it happens in public, they get shut down very quickly. Y'all, there was a Democrat politician and a Republican politician during the Obama years. One Democrat went on live television and went, STFU Karl Rove, or it was Dick Cheney. It was some fat, bald white guy. And he lost his seat because of his comment. Then there was a Republican from South Carolina who famously said, "You lie," during the State of the Union. He got primaried and he lost his election. Something happened during the Obama years after those 2 events that just caused a breakdown in our rhetoric to where we essentially got Donald Trump, who uses uncouth rhetoric. I don't really care anymore because that's what the average voter wants. And if the voter wants something, the voter's going to get it. So we have watched a breakdown of our rhetoric. And that's what I've observed in my lifetime. This is not how average politicians talk. I've heard them, all right? I've heard them when I had to cover legislative sessions. Politicians speak in code. And Stephen A. Smith is sort of speaking in code here because, once again, he actually came out in support of Trump, and his producers told him, you can't do that. Well, now we live in a world where Tenacious D had so much backlash from saying, next time don't miss, that they canceled their tour and had a massive apology statement saying that they don't believe in political violence. And yet, and by the way, we do need to forgive them for that. We cannot work like the left and live in a world where we don't forgive and allow people to redeem themselves. What Tenacious D said was wrong, it was vile, and the band apologized for it. So now I can stop my boycott of Jack Black and go back to loving him again. That's the apology that we need to accept. Stephen A. Smith is pointing out that the rhetoric that's being used is now getting so mainstream that there are people who actively wished that Donald Trump had not moved his head just in time for the bullet to whiz by and nick his ear. We have people who wish death upon their political opponents. It is vile and it is gross. And lastly, we need to talk about two things. One, the shooter, who went by the name, his last name was Crooks. This kid was bullied into oblivion. And this is the, I once jokingly said we need to bring back bullying. No, this is what happens when you get bullied too much. And this kid was a social outcast. And you'll notice something that in a lot of school shooter situations, dating all the way back to Columbine, these kids, more often than not, are the social outcasts who get kicked to the curb so many times that they just snap. Just snap. These people get pushed to a breaking point. And that has become almost a normalized thing in a hyper internet age, where you can go viral for the worst possible reason. And it's a horrible problem that our society has. And that's exactly what Stephen A. Smith is talking about here. The rhetoric that's being used by adults is just as bad as the abuse we heave upon that children will just give to each other. We live in a cruel, violent world, which is why we need systems in place to protect us. And ultimately, I think the real takeaway of this video, if you get away from Skip Bayless, your IQ goes up 20 points. That man is just media poison. And Stephen A. Smith is finally free of that man. So is Shannon Sharp. And once again, Skip Bayless was the problem the whole time. He's 0 for 2 here. And Stephen A. Smith is now allowed to speak at least most of his mind. But y'all, he has hit the nail right on the head. We have a rhetoric problem. And so there are times where I say that the left has captured things and the left is doing destructive things. I'm merely stating that as fact, not as a call to action or violence. The call to action is vote them out. Get better candidates. Start reforming the system. It's not send them to the guillotine, which is exactly what I have overheard in conversations from these ridiculous leftists that I would intern with. They would say the most vile things. There was one awesome one that made his way up to DC. He's one of the few base leftists that I've ever met. Great guy. A huge sports fan, knew his stuff, but he also knew how to be a polite, respectable person, and he's willing to work with others and even compromise in order to achieve goals. That's what we need. We need people who are willing to set aside their pride, their jealousy, or even their trauma in order to pass good things and to ultimately bring Americans together. That idea of unity is needed now more than ever. And if we were to protect the flag behind me, it's what we must do. Folks, my name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed this segment here on Politibrawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. And until then, y'all have a good one.